There have been more than 9 million illegal alien border crossings on President Biden's watch. At the same time, there's been a 57% decrease in arrests of criminal illegal aliens and a 67% decrease in deportation of criminal aliens. This complete lack of enforcement of existing law has caused unimaginable human suffering across our country. One such tragedy occurred last month in Athens, Georgia. An illegal alien from Venezuela brutally murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley on the campus of University of Georgia. What makes this story all the more devastating was that the killer could have been stopped, but wasn't. So, how on earth was this tragedy even allowed to take place? Well, here's the timeline. The killer illegally entered the United States in September 22 in El Paso, Texas. He was caught, but then he was paroled into the country. He then made his way to New York City, where he was arrested for child endangerment in 2023, but then he was released. He then fled to Georgia, where he committed several petty crimes like theft and shoplifting. He was not detained by ICE. Then came the tragedy of February 22nd, where he preyed on an innocent young woman jogging around a university campus. This was allowed to take place because of the open border policies of President Biden. It took place because executive agencies are given discretion to determine what crimes trigger a detainer to be issued to take an illegal alien into custody. The discretion loophole has got to be closed. And that's why we're here today, to make sure that these tragedies never happen again. In Laken's honor, Senator Katie Britt of Alabama and I have teamed up to introduce the Laken Riley Act. This bill would require ICE to issue detainers and take into custody illegal aliens who commit crimes like theft and shoplifting. The legislation also empowers state attorneys general to sue the Secretary of Homeland Security for taking actions on immigration that harm their states or their citizens. Bottom line, if this bill were in place before February 22nd, Laken Riley would be alive today. The House of Representatives passed this bill last week in a bipartisan vote of 251 to 70, including 37 Democrats. You know, in a time of division and polarization, the Laken Riley Act, it brought both sides together. It's our hope that we can learn from this horrific situation and make some positive change. So let's pass the Laken Riley Act today. Mr. President, I'd like to yield to my colleague from Indiana.
Mr. President,
Senator from Indiana.
February 22nd, a 22-year-old nursing student named Laken Riley went for a morning run on a popular trail. Despite doing everything right, informing her friends of her expected return time, and sharing her location with them, Laken never made it home. Her life was stolen by an illegal alien who should have never been in the country. The president's open border policies are solely behind it. Remember, before he came in, we were at record lows. Now we're at record highs. We're even talking about categories we didn't have before, like gotaways. It's a national security risk. Who has come into this country when currently monthly 50 to 60,000 people never confront the Border Patrol, not to mention the 200,000 to 300,000 that do. This individual had been arrested in New York for a felony. The loss of Laken Riley was an avoidable tragedy inflicted by President Biden and his policies. These policies allow illegal aliens like Laken Riley's killer to roam free even after committing crimes. The Laken Riley Act demands the immediate deportation of illegal aliens when they are arrested for a crime. Makes sense. For those with concerns about due process, remember, we're talking about individuals with zero legal right to be in the U.S. in the first place. Retainers for ICE deportation should already be issued in these cases, but aren't in many cases due to sanctuary city status. We should honor Laken Riley's memory by assuring that no other family ever has to endure this heartache. Pass the Laken Riley Act. I yield back.
I'd like to further yield to my colleague from Kansas.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. President.
Senator from Kansas, wish to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Kansas.
I want to start by thanking Senator Budd for leading this very important issue to the Senate floor. We rise today to honor and pay our respects to the late Laken Riley and her family and mourn with her family. Today we call on this chamber to come together to ensure this never happens again. Laken Hope Riley. Laken Hope Riley was a beautiful young woman in the prime of her life. Was brutally murdered in broad daylight while jogging on the University of Georgia's campus. Her alleged murderer, a Venezuelan illegal alien, was one of 2 million people paroled by Joe Biden. 1 of 2 million. Ironically, he was welcomed here on the United States soil by this president and his egregious open border policies. He was stopped by the United States Border Patrol in 2022 when he crossed into Kansas, into Texas illegally. But because of the Biden administration's unlawful mass parole of illegal aliens, he was permitted into our country. From Texas, he moved to New York, where he was arrested by the New York Police Department last year for acting in a manner to injure a child and for a motor vehicle violation. But he was quickly released and never turned over to ICE for deportation. Instead, he was released by police before a detainer could ever be issued by DHS and allowed to roam freely. Then he journeyed on to Athens, Georgia. And now we understand that the alleged assailant is a member of a violent Venezuelan gang. But how can we ever identify who these people are when 10,000 people are crossing our border every day? How can the Border Patrol possibly vet these people in a proper manner? Just like so many other unvetted migrants living in the country right now, this murder was handed the American dream that Laken Riley should be living right now. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from North Carolina.
It's for the reasons articulated by my friend and colleague from Kansas and friend and colleague from Indiana that, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of calendar number 341, H.R. 7511. The bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to be reconsidered be considered made and laid upon the table.